I mean, I've been in other conversations and I often hear about IAST, interactive application security testing. And IAST vendors say, IAST is better because it does software composition from within a running application. So you install an agent and then you profile your application. And then as the application is running in QA, it can actually see what packages are included, right? But, what are your thoughts? Like, why would someone do that versus, running software composition analysis in the traditional way? What is the relationship of all these scanners together? Should teams be using both of them? What about SAST, SCA? How does SCA fit within the broader picture of all the other security scanners?
That's a good question, because a lot of the times I want to let you answer. I just want to give clarity to our listeners that SCA scanners will scan your source code, your packages looking for dependencies that may be out of date. And it may find a package that has some vulnerability in it, but you may not actually be using the function that's vulnerable. And so IAST will actually look at the running flow, the control flow of your application, and try to find if that's the case.
Yeah. Mergebase also has the ability to instrument an application and actually look at either in test or in production what you're actually using. So we have a lot of experience kind of, with this. I actually have a whole presentation on that topic, because the answer is complicated. But even if you are never in a normal usage of the application using a library, depending on the type of vulnerability, and I can actually demo that to you if you want it. You can like, for instance, if it's a remote code execution, right? You could still use that vulnerability even though the application itself doesn't use it, right? Because modern programming languages have a lot of dynamic capabilities, right? And they have also things like serialization. Right? With serialization, what you do is you have a bunch of objects in the application and you stream it to a text file. And JSON is a kind of a very well-known format, Java serialized object notation. And of course, then you take that JSON file and you can convert it back to a set of objects. So if I am able to, for instance, inject something in an application, I could create these objects that normally would never exist and start as a hacker and start using them. That's why, for instance, we've seen so many what's called serialization type of attacks. Right? They leverage this, fantastic flexible capability in applications, unfortunately in a bad way. Yeah. So yes, I mean, it's good to understand what pieces are being used, and in some cases that is sufficient. It means that if, say, denial of service attack as an example, if it doesn't get used, then you're not susceptible to that particular type of attack. But in other cases, like remote code execution or serialization, you could still exploit these components.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to note that, while you may not be using a particular function in a library now, because you have that library installed, it's not impossible to imagine that in some near future update, some developer goes, oh, we have a library for that. Let's just use it. We have a function for that. Let's use that. And so it can get implemented.
Yeah. It's kind of a fascinating topic. I mean, what we're also seeing with customers is that as applications gets older, this problem essentially becomes worse, because then less and less and less of the libraries get used. We've had instances, I won't mention any names, where we saw that only like 5% of the libraries got used. And and so you've got, and of course you can imagine that other 95% of those libraries were not the most used versions, had a lot of vulnerabilities, created effectively a very large attack surface. Right. So this is and so then you're asking the application team, well, why are you guys including all these libraries if you're not really using them? And essentially what happens is that everybody's looking at each other because nobody knows. And
well, I came into this project, if it was already built when I came
exactly. That's yeah. I mean, I'm better not touch it because you never know, right? So
you pull out some translation library and all of a sudden the whole screen flips upside down. It's yeah, it can definitely work that way.